Hello, Bloomers. Happy Labor Day. I know it's a holiday, but I'm so happy for those who are able to join us today. This is a very, very special episode that is very near and dear to my heart. The reason why I really wanted to have, hi Jackie, this discussion today is because if anyone is a person of color like myself, and you may have noticed that it's very hard and challenging to find books written by minority authors. And so I was very touched when I discovered Read for Unity because their main purpose is to distribute books from BIPOC authors. Now, if you're not familiar with that term, it stands for Black, Indigenous People of Color. So I'm so excited and elated and proud about the work that they're doing throughout the entire country. And I just wanted to see if I can figure out a way to help and use our platform to further discuss the work that they're doing because it's definitely meaningful to me. I feel like people of color very much so need to be able to see themselves in literature, and we need to encourage more people of color to be authors as well. So our next guest, Yenny, is the founder of Read for Unity, and she's going to come on today and she's going to invite her into her world and the work that she's doing with Read for Unity. And I'm so happy to have her. Yenny, come on out.
Hi, Sophia.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much again for having me. I really do appreciate this platform to tell our story.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you again so much, so much, so much for being here. I really
Of
appreciate
course.
it. Carl, I want to welcome you to the discussion as well. For anyone that's new to the Bloom platform, we really want to make this conversation very interactive. So feel free to list your comments and questions, and we'll be sure to address them. But before we get started, Yenny, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about yourself. Tell us a little bit about you. Where are you from? What's your story?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. So, I was born and raised in this amazing, beautiful city, and I'm biased because I'm from there, called Bandung in Indonesia, in Southeast Asia. Bandung is an amazing city. It's just mountainous and
Mm.
absolutely beautiful. When I grew up, though, just to get into a little bit of the story of my why, right? I
Yeah.
did grow up during, somewhat of an uncertain times geopolitically for the country at that particular time, and kind of both witnessing and experiencing a lot of iniquities and disparities, kind of on every level, um, kind of jumbled up all at the same time. And as a child, that kind of changed me and influenced me, sort of to be who I am today. Just to get into a quick detail,
Yeah.
Indonesia is quite a tapestry. It's a beautiful place with where 300 plus million folks live in many separated islands, thousands of them. Of course, there are main ones like Java, which is where the capital city is, but um, each of these islands have its own tradition, language, religions, etc. So it's a beautiful tapestry, but as you can see, it can be also challenging in terms of managing all this diversity and sort of managing its diversity beautifully.
Yeah.
That has been a huge challenge, and and with leaders who at times were not able to sort of make that happen, right? So while the 90% of population of our country was Muslim, and actually the largest Muslim population in the world, it lives in Indonesia,
Wow.
which is amazing. Um, but our family just happens to be of a Chinese descent, which is a very minority group, and also Christian in religion. So we're both kind of like a double whammy in terms of being minorities. So I know exactly, that intersection on, okay, we're the different ones, right? So I've
Yeah.
experienced that firsthand, and during President Suharto's regime, unfortunately, that was the time during my formative years. Um, Racial, religious, and geopolitical tensions were extremely heightened sometimes, and a lot of times actually got out of control. It often manifested in, riots, unrest, etc. So these situations
Mm.
obviously also widen this economic disparities and more, right? So for me as a 10-year-old at the time, I was like, that was interesting, because on one hand, I grew up in this privilege, what I call it, coming from a somewhat middle class family. But I also witnessed a lot of extreme poverties right around me, often my own neighbors, my own best friends, things like that. I can't put the two and two together as to why some people are going through what they're going through, and
Yeah.
why we weren't, things like that. But also on the other hand, our family faced certain discriminations, as these Chinese Christians, etc. So this sort of duality that I experienced in my own child's mind, actually fueled me to be a positive thing, because as early as that, 10, 11 years old, I was always trying to find ways to play my very, very small part, whether or not I know what that means, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to make a difference in this world. Now, this might sound extremely cliche, but because I know what it's like to be privileged, and I also know what it's like to be somewhat oppressed, from the other end, I always knew that in the midst of these chaotic situations, right, I must have been put on this earth at least to be that vessel of change, right, in my own little way. So I actually took a lot of steps in these directions in middle school. So I tried to create like social impact club or anything that would grab other people's attention to kind of get with me, and then sort of make these impacts, right? Unfortunately, at that time, allyship was not really the buzzwords like
Yeah.
it is today. So
Yeah.
in the middle school, I wasn't popular for for creating those clubs or waves, so to speak, right? I did find that none of my fellow students really shared my passion. However, this setback actually fueled me even more. I really did stay on course, during doing anything that I could in my own little way to impact the community around me positively. But most importantly, I knew that furthering my education would be that ticket for me that I really, really needed to be more impactful change maker. So after high school, I actually didn't enroll in university right away. I worked for a couple of years, and I finally, was able to obtain a scholarship to study in the United States. So I arrived in Statesboro, Georgia, Georgia Southern. Go Eagles!
Georgia. Yeah. Any Eagles fans?
I have to give the shout outs because that's my
Yeah.
favorite place in the world. But that was the first time ever that I was able to find kindred spirits there through mission driven activities, through student clubs. There's no such thing back home. So that really was invigorating to me, because as a young person, I was very impressionable. I wanted to learn, and then at that time, some of the activities that I was doing directly in the communities were very, very eye-opening. I only learned about, the Black and Brown folks' experiences from textbooks, from teachers, things like that. But at that time, I was able to actually witness it firsthand, and actually got involved. So that was huge for me. And it was a huge shift, even in a lot of the unlearning that I had to do as well, So, and I learned one thing from one of my mentors, actually, at that time in Georgia Southern, that, hey, he said, serving means using your privilege to build others. It means, taking that back seat, right? So others who never, ever had a chance to shine can finally take their place. So this really became my motto of service ever since, way long before allyship, etc., becomes these buzzwords, right? And I'm also post-college, I'm also one of the most fortunate few that have the opportunity to continue my mission-driven activities through my corporate experiences and through a nonprofit consulting. So it has taken me, from fundraising to advocacy, a lot of chance for me to learn on what it means to be an effective change maker, so to speak, as an individual anyways, right? It has taken me to many places around the world. It has given me a chance, most importantly, to work alongside amazing community leaders from all walks of life. And fast forward to last year, in the height of the pandemic, there were actually two major milestones that I'm super grateful for.
Please
First,
share.
after a long uh, challenging years, I finally completed my master's degree while working, etc. from Harvard
That is a
University.
challenge.
Yes, it was a huge
Congratulations.
challenge. Thank you. Because, and I think it requires a lot of also my family's sacrifice as well, So shout out to my
Hmm.
better half, Edward, for that, and my
Oh,
son, Nate. Yes. So, and I think that gave me more platform to actually be a more effective change maker as well. Secondly, immediately upon that graduation, my best friend Sarah and I actually started a small grassroots nonprofit, Read for Unity, which I will talk about shortly. And this fall, I'm actually blessed to continue my journey pursuing a doctoral degree at Georgetown. My hope, though, is to really use these opportunities as continued platform for me to again to be on that backseat, to shine that lights on others in my own authentic ways. So that's in the
oh,
roundabout ways is my kind of story.
love it. I love your story and thank you for very much. Yes,
Oh,
congratulations.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
And you know what? You have a fantastic mentor. I love what they said about using your privilege to help others. I mean, that is honestly so important.
Right.
Um, and I can't wait for people to really get a better understanding of Reef for Unity and the things that
Abs-
you're doing. But I have to ask you, let's go ahead and spill the beans. Tell us about Reef for Unity. When did you start this nonprofit with your best friend Sarah?
Mhm.
What was that moment where you just knew that this had to come to fruition? What was that
Yes.
experience like for you?
Yes, thank you. So that is such a great question. So Sarah and I, again, we've been, great friends. We're both from Indonesia, and we kind of grew up here together, so to speak. I'm much older than her. I have to disclose that because she's like, no, you're not in the same. Yeah, but. But she's kind of like my baby sister, But she and I shared the one huge passion, and that is how to again leverage our privilege and our challenges, as Asian
Mhm,
Americans, etc.,
mhm.
to help others in our own most authentic ways. That is not sort of like a parachuting or things like that. So for since 2018, I think Sarah and I have been talking about different ways. We brainstorm, put it back on the board. We almost
Yeah,
launched something and we put it back on the board again because we thought we wanted to be that intentional, right? We don't want
yes.
to just kind of go with the trend at that time or what have you. So that being said, again, we drew from our own experiences as Asian American immigrants, right? How we can leverage all of these to create change. Now, for me though, one of the most experiences, I'm going to take it further, actually earlier, post college. So after I graduated from Georgia Southern, one of the most profound, I think, experiences stood out as my biggest why of starting Read for Unity much later is
Yeah.
that first job out of college that took me to this area in South Atlanta called Union City. So I lived there for a few years during my first job. But the job kind of it was in a manufacturing facility, so it ended early every day. So
Oh,
I decided to um, um, kind of like tutor or mentor elementary school children in reading and homework help and
yeah.
things like that, but mostly reading because that was kind of like my passion. I love children's books, and things like that. So one thing that I noticed very strikingly was that there's not one book. I mean, I went from one library to another. There's not one book that represents these kids that I'm teaching. So,
Yeah.
I mean, great books, lots of great books,
Right.
with positive messages and things like that. But there's not one that looks like them. Or if one
Yeah.
that looks, okay, so one book maybe that I found about an African American basketball player or things like that is
Yeah.
very stereotypical, and it
Yes.
doesn't tell the nuance of who my kids are and what their stories
Hmm.
are, and things
Hmm.
like that. So that was, to me, that was striking, even as a young person, because I thought, well, this is odd because many kids in that neighborhood were African Americans. So how come there were no books that they can read that are with characters who look exactly like them, or at least
Right.
having the same experiences like them. So to me, that was kind of like they have no one to look up to in these books, and things like that. So later, much later, I also became a mom to an Asian American kid, and then I experienced the same thing. I mean, I can't find any books for him that would kind of make him go, "Oh gosh, I want to be like him," when I grow up, kind of thing,
Right.
right? So fast forward again in early 2020, in I think in I believe it was in April or May, Sarah and I decided that because literacy is our passion, we wanted to just start, to do something, instead of keep going back to the drawing board.
Yes.
So what we do is Sarah and I noticed that there are lots of those little free library boxes. I don't know if you guys have noticed that in your neighborhood, but it's
Yeah.
everywhere. It's actually an initiative by littlefreelibrary.org. So we thought, hey, because those boxes are from everyone's familiar with them. Most neighborhoods have them, no matter where they are, for the most part. In Atlanta, there's gazillion of them, and we
Uh-huh.
thought, why don't we just collect, funds, from friends, families, etc., and create an Amazon wish list. Curate the books. For me, the book titles I've been curating for the past year or two, just for my own experience, learning experience. So Sarah and I started to get amazing support from our own
Oh.
family, friends, neighbors, and those Amazon boxes keeps coming every day, and we just fill them with these diverse books. First in my neighborhood, which is a suburb of predominantly Caucasian suburb, and then believe it or not, the impact was quite immediate, and I'm not even lying. This is a true story. I went, to kind of like fill that library, and then
Yeah.
a mom just came, and then it's like, because we stamp each books with Read for Unity and our contact and stuff like that. So she was telling us, she's like, I mean, I have been wanting for the longest time to start diversifying, my own bookshelves at home. I just don't know where to start, what books to get and things like that. So this is really has helped me. That's what, we heard
Mm.
that from parents over and over from the suburb. And then from the areas who need representations, of course, that was such a welcome additions, because finally, there are books that represent, all the children there in the area, right? So we've partnered actually with Refuge Coffee in Clarkston. So if anyone is not familiar with
Oh.
Refuge Coffee is actually a social enterprise, a nonprofit social enterprise. It's a coffee house. So if you're ever in Atlanta, you have to Google it and visit it. Its
Please
purpose
do.
is
I'll definitely
to,
stop by.
oh yes, you need to. Refuge Coffee's purpose is actually to help newly arrived new Americans, whether they are refugees, asylees, etc., um, to resettle by providing them with job training and living wages. So not just the minimum wage, but the living wages, so that they can actually settle and then help their family, and then they can help
Oh,
others.
wow.
So their coffee shop is in the center of the Clarkston, Georgia, about 3 miles radius town, 15 miles outside the downtown Atlanta, and it has been dubbed the most diverse square mile in America, with 100+ nationalities, 60+ languages spoken in that little municipality.
Wow.
So we decided that, as immigrants and refugees ourselves, we wanted to honor that by partnering with them. And they are considered book desert, the whole area, because the schools are Title I schools, which are,
Lower
low funded
income.
school,
Yeah.
low income school, and low funded schools in underserved area for the most part. So a lot of the elementary schools don't even have their own libraries. Teachers have to come up with their own money, to replenish their classroom libraries, etc. So we
Oh my
stood up
goodness.
our small library in Refuge Coffee, and ever since the communities have been utilizing it like there's no tomorrow. We've been refilling that every month, and things like that. So with that, we try to not replicate too much of our own libraries, but
Mhm.
donate diverse books to existing, library boxes all around Atlanta. And basically also we launched Books for Heroes campaign late last year to make sure that we deliberately donate books, diverse books, to teachers who we allow to request books from our website. So we just celebrated our first anniversary in July. And in one short
Woo!
year, thanks to generosity of amazing people, our very, very small organization has donated over 2,500 brand new K to 8 diverse books to community partners around Atlanta and beyond. So yeah, we're so
Oh,
grateful.
we are grateful for you. Oh my goodness, what an impact you've had. I didn't know. I've heard of food deserts, but I've never heard of book deserts
Yeah.
before. And wow, I mean, it's so sad to think that there are schools that don't have a library.
And if they do, it's just, with very, very little books, limited numbers of them. Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Mhm.
And we have some educators here that are definitely enjoying the conversation and are very grateful for the work that you're doing. So Jackie's a teacher, Robin as well. Felicia, we definitely want to welcome you to the conversation. Thank you so much for being here. At the core of what we do here at Bloom is always storytelling.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what you're doing too. You're elevating voices that are often not seen and
Mhm.
heard.
Mhm.
And I'm just so excited for the work that you're doing, and this is just amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you mentioned earlier about some racial tensions that you experienced in your formative years. I know you donate a lot of books to children as well. What what impact have you seen on their lives, and what do you think the importance is on actually instilling confidence in children, in being comfortable with who they are, as a person of color or minority, through
Absolutely.
literature?
Yeah, and I think that's such a valid and important questions. I think some of the challenges that we've seen is that a lot of the Black, brown people of colors are not represented properly. In every aspects of life. Mostly, if you really, really boil down to it, right? Um, and this is based on my own experience as well as the communities that I've been, entrenching myself with. A lot of this toxic divisiveness and things like that happen in our world often really stem from just very systemic lack of exposure to people who are different from us. Because even in my life, right, when I see that, even back home, like sometimes when people weren't really sure, how to talk to me and things like that, the second that I sort of like explain to them, who I am and things like that,
Yeah.
in a genuine way, a lot of times, everything is kind of diffused, right?
Yeah.
So we believe that sometimes that's why books to us, especially for as early readers as possible, is so important to build that characters of empathy, right, of understanding.
Hmm.
So our work is to kind of bridge this disconnect and hopefully unite communities. I mean, this sounds ambitious, but I think this is, books play a huge role in that. And that's why we're arming teachers and communities with books that act as, I don't know if you've heard this windows and mirrors theory. Windows means that books that amplify stories of those who are, like you mentioned earlier, often unheard, often underrepresented.
Hmm.
So kids in this segment, right, can finally see themselves in stories and know that their stories matter too. I mean, obviously, if you don't ever see anyone who look like you do anything important, how would you
Right.
build that confidence to tell yourself, I can do something like he can? You won't
Absolutely.
have that, right? Confidence. And then the mirrors portion is that on the other hand thing, where other students, get to see that, hey, those who don't look like me, do matter too. They also have hopes, big dreams, aspirations, just like me, right? So I think
Yeah.
this windows and mirrors theories is so important. And for us, testing this quote unquote market, when we drop off books in little libraries in my neighborhood and in Sarah's neighborhood, which are the more of the inner city neighborhood, we can absolutely attest to the truth of this theory, kids starting to understand, like, oh wow, so actually one child in my neighborhood was telling me he's 10, and kids are very honest. He's like,
Yeah.
so I have a friend from Ghana, his name is Jalen, so now I know that he can also be a doctor. So I drop off these books by
Hmm.
a doctor, a black doctor in Detroit. Uh,
Yeah.
so she wrote an amazing children's book called Fly, Dr. Fly. Her name is Lindsay Archer. You have to follow her. But
Fly, Dr.
I
Fly.
drop off her book, and then, this child was like, oh, wow. So, my friend Jalen can also be a doctor. So it builds that in him, as well. So yeah, I think that's why I think it is important, this representation both ways, through books.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's so powerful. And, I mentioned to you, I actually discovered Read for Unity by a book
Yeah.
by a African American author. Shonda is her name. So it's called Kiana Reads. So I don't know if anyone here is familiar with that book, but that's how I discovered you. And my
Yes.
daughter absolutely loves that book.
Oh my
And
goodness.
we live in a predominantly white area.
Yes.
We love our community, of course, but I also want to make sure that my daughter is confident in who she is. And,
Absolutely.
her hair texture is different, and just understanding the things that, are different about her, but that still doesn't, it means that she's still powerful and she still has strength. And so she can see herself in books. And so I want to talk a little bit more about literature.
Mhm.
And can you tell us what percentage of authors are actually from the BIPOC community?
Yeah, so the latest statistics actually show that only about 26.8, like a little less than 27% actually, books are authored by BIPOC authors. And again, the latest statistics also show that in children's book market, at least, right, that only 12% of children's books published in the US feature main characters who are African or African American. About 9% would Asian Americans, about
Mm.
6% Latinx characters, and only 1% about anybody in the native nations, and
Wow.
even smaller, 0.1% for Pacific Islander, which kind of directly contradict the demographics of our public schools today, right? Where
Yeah.
in many instances, at least ones that I've seen, uh, there are more students of colors, than Caucasian students. So this statistics a bit unnerving. And again, the BIPOC authors itself, for example, black authors who actually black books with black characters, for example, authored by black authors, are only less than 26%, 27%. So
Wow.
yes.
Wow.
Hmm.
And it's unfortunate, but it's unfortunate, but it's so important for us to tell our stories, because we talked
Yes.
about being able to see each other and see ourselves. And you and I had a discussion
Hmm.
that it's important to us. It's important when you're purchasing books
Hmm.
to actually verify if it's actually a person of color who has actually written that book,
Absolutely.
because a lot of times it's actually maybe a Caucasian person that
That's right.
is telling our story for us.
Mhm.
And it's important for us to own our narratives.
That's right.
And
Mhm.
and even here at Bloom, I get so many people that I see in day-to-day life, and they're like,
Mhm.
oh, I don't have an important story to share. And I'm like, everybody has an important story to
That's
share.
right.
Everyone has a story.
Right.
And so I've just gotten into the practice, instead of asking people, what do you do for a living? What's your story?
That's
Because I
right.
believe, once we actually start having dialogue and communing and getting to know each other, we realize that there's so many similarities, and that's when that
Mhm.
authentic bond starts to form. And so, um,
Absolutely.
I also want to mention our next episode that we have next Monday. We
Yeah.
have an author she's actually published 10 books. And
Wow.
so she started a company called Pollen LLC, and she's a person of color, and she helps
Wow.
people develop their story and become authors themselves.
How about that?
Yes,
That's
so
great.
I'm so glad that these two episodes are so close together because if we have someone here that has maybe thought about becoming an author, there are resources out there available to you. So just
Mhm.
definitely make sure you join us for our next discussion as
Absolutely.
well. So,
Mhm.
again, why is it so important to encourage people to read
Mhm.
books by people of color?
Yeah, and I think there was one amazing write up from this article that I followed. Uh, Actually, it's called mom.com. It summarizes it so perfectly as to why it's important for people to read books written by BIPOC authors as their own story narrative. So stories, based on either factual accounts or either interpreted through fictional characters, right? You mentioned earlier, they do set a standard on how we receive these narratives, right, as
Mm-hmm.
readers. Again, for example, white writers who are attempting to retell, I guess, black stories or black experiences are at best ill-equipped, even though the intention is great, might be great, right?
Right.
Because only a black
Mm-hmm.
person can authentically convey, their story, in the most authentic ways. What it's like to live in their skin, what it is like, there's only
Yeah.
that person. So these, like you said, own story and account narratives are so important to, again, to build empathy, in my opinion, also to
Mm-hmm.
understand and hopefully help, unite countries and improve human conditions. I mean, I know these are big goals, but at the same time, I believe that it stems from that understanding on, how to how to appreciate, own story narratives, right? So in the past year or so, we all know we have seen many people with great intention trying to be, again, allies in these very, very complex issues of systemic racism. For example, um, my own learning and unlearning experiences tell me that we need to be very, very careful in how we insert ourselves in other people's struggles and experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I personally have to always remind myself, and again, everything always have to start with me. uh,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm not here to, number one, save anyone or tell anyone's story. I am here, however, to use every ounce of my privilege and struggles to allow others to take their place, like I mentioned earlier, to finally take their seats at the table that they probably never were invited in. I just need to,
Yeah.
help pull up that chair, right? Being
Mm-hmm.
intentional in books that we read is part of being a great ally. It's part of this crucial step of being true allies. So how I believe it. Mhm.
Absolutely. I love that. And like Latita said, representation, positive representation matters.
Mhm.
She loves this. Yeah, see it, believe it, achieve it. And I want to also
Agree.
highlight Robin's discussion, Robin's point. She said it's very important for them to see and live around a vast representation of successful people who look like them. Absolutely.
Yes,
Just a small concept of that. But I remember growing up, I was always told that, for example, women couldn't be pastors of a church.
exactly.
Like that's just one example. And when became, I was actually probably close to 30
Right.
before I actually met a woman that was the pastor of her own church. And I was like, whoa, I didn't think this was possible. You know,
Exactly.
and that wasn't the path for me. But
Right.
if the same concept applies, that if you
Yes.
don't see somebody who looks like you doing something that you may aspire to do, if for some reason you limit yourself mentally and you think that is not a space for you
Right.
to progress to. And so books, this is just such important information. I'm so happy that we're having this conversation and that you
Right.
actually took the initiative to start Read for Unity, and you're doing such amazing work.
Thank
So
you.
I have to ask you, is
Mhm.
there a reading list?
Mhm.
Are there a list of books that you recommend?
Absolutely. So we have been on our website, readforunity.com. We do have a book wish list, what we call it. And if you click on that wish list, you will actually see some, yeah. Thank you, Zaki. That's actually perfect. Either on the two boxes underneath. Either our Amazon wish list or the Red Balloon bookstore wish list. Those two contain books by BIPOC authors that we have been, Sarah and I have been personally curating. Um, and recommending. Again, the list is actually a work in progress. Remember that. And a lot of them, of course, 90% of them are K-8 age groups, because that's our focus. But we do also have some young recommendation from for young readers. I mean, young adult readers, as well as some adult books like by Ibram Kendi, etc. But we try to incorporate our list to include as many um, independent BIPOC authors as possible. Now, again, we wanted to go a little bit more granular in this too, in honoring independent authors. There are so many of them out there. Even in Atlanta, there are hundreds of them. I haven't even scratched the surface. So my plan is in the next few months, we would like to create a separate list only for independent BIPOC authors, and we wanted to probably group them by age groups, so that it's easier to find. But for now, this is a great start if you just wanted to take a look, and if you haven't been familiarizing yourself with diverse books. I think these two are a great start. Mhm. Oh, again, I wanted to mention too, on our website, actually right now it's still under construction, but we also provide book bundles. This was actually out of requests from several parents, teachers, and caregivers. So email us at readforunity@gmail.com, because these book bundles basically are starter kits for folks who want to diversify their bookshelves. So we pre-curate about a dozen to 25 of those book bundles to start you off with an amazing journey and providing diverse reads for your children and at home. Let's see if I miss anything. And yes, so our email is readforunity at gmail.com. If you have any question, even just need help in choosing awesome, diverse books for your readers at home.
That's wonderful. I would definitely want to encourage people. Read for Unity, excuse me, is a 501(c) charity, nonprofit. So if you have the means, please support. Please share this video. This is a charity that is doing great things for our community, and empowering and instilling wisdom into children's lives. So this is very, very important work. Yenny, I also want to ask you, you did highlight that your focus is K through 8th grade. Why did you and Sarah choose that as your primary focus?
Right. And I think the reason why we choose that is because we believe that the earlier, I think, we can sort of expose, children to diverse stories, I think the more effective the result. And a lot of the teachers, we prior to launching, we actually interviewed more than between 125, 150 teachers between K to 12, teachers. And the majority of the answers is that, if I had to choose, I would have chosen, the youngest readers possible. Specifically the grade 1, 2, 3, because they're at the most impressionable times of their lives at that particular time, according to teachers who we interviewed. So we decided to start there. Now, but depending on our partnership, so right now we are donating books to also other nonprofits with relevant work. So for example, one youth organization in Atlanta called MVK Atlanta, they typically provide, prior to the pandemic, they provide tickets and things like that, experiences to Atlanta Braves and things like that, for Atlanta youth. But since the pandemic happened, because the events were canceled, they pivoted to providing them books. So we partner with them and provide, books, but their demographics are mostly the 8 to 12 grades. So we curated a separate list for them so that we make sure that we provide them with the right, reading materials.
Honestly, I know we have educators again that's commenting, they're saying they love what you're doing. You're
Thank
doing
you.
fantastic work, honestly, and we wish you the very best.
Thank
I'm
you.
so happy that I found your nonprofit. We will definitely continue to support you. Do you have any upcoming events in the future that you would like to share with our audience?
Yeah, so we actually will have a couple of upcoming big events that we do. Is a huge, usually book fairs that we do at Refuge Coffee, but we also do it online and virtually. So one would be coming up before the Thanksgiving holidays, and then one actually before the Christmas and end of year holidays. We through these book fairs is where we actually collect the most funding for our work for the next year, so be on the lookout. Please follow us. We are extremely active on Instagram first. So our Instagram is just read and then the number 4 unity. Any upcoming events will be listed there, and any ways that you can get involved, whether it's through donating through our website readforunity.com. Currently our Books for Heroes campaign is underway, so we're ambitious in trying to provide 1,000 books for 50 teachers who are on the waiting list because
Wow.
we want to give each teacher 20 book bundle, so that we have 50 right now on the waiting list. So we're like, we need, obviously support on that. And if volunteering is more of your thing, please send us an email at readforunity@gmail.com, because we need our champions, is what we call it, And lastly, if you want to do any book fundraising, we have several of our individual groups and churches and corporate partners, for example, who want to fundraise on our behalf in their own ways. Again, send us an email, because there's creative ways to do so, to make it fun for
Oh,
everyone while they're doing great work.
oh my goodness. Guys, we really have to come together and make sure, there's a lot of challenges that our country has experienced and that people individually have experienced,
Yes.
you know, for hundreds of years, but I know it may
Yes.
seem more concentrated over the last 2 to 3 years. And so,
Mhm.
if there is anything that you can do to help, even if it's by spreading the word,
Yes.
please definitely do so and invite teachers to this conversation as well, because we need people that are willing to help and be advocates for change. And so that's the
Absolutely.
only way that progress will happen. And so, I just want to end with saying thank you so much, Yenny, for being here, for sharing your story with us.
Thank
There's
you.
value, again, in everyone's story. And I just want to thank you thank you, Latita. She said this is so
Thank
awesome.
you so much, Alicia.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just want to thank you for actually having the courage, like you said, for using your privilege. It is not easy, um, to be an advocate for change and actually start something yourself.
Right.
But it's so obvious that you have passion, and I love people who have ambitious goals. Because
Wow.
you just might as well try. You might as
That's
well
right.
try.
That's
Might as
right.
well
Might as well
try.
try. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
because
you.
people need you. People need you.
Yeah, thank you again to Bloom, to Zakia and everyone who are, with their kind comments, and people like you, would be the one who move this cause forward, right? Because we always need, again, champions to rally around us. We can't do this alone. We like I said, we're only a couple of people. I actually wanted to give a shout out to my board
Me
member,
too.
Shanda Austin.
Yes.
Yes, because she is also a huge part of this mission. She's an educator for over, gosh, a couple of decades in DeKalb County, Georgia. And she's an author of Kiana's Braids, the book that your daughter
Kiana's
absolutely
braids.
loves.
Yes.
And is to Sarah Tungala, my partner in crime, basically in this. And we have 2 more board members who are all women. We have all women company here.
Yeah.
We have Ria Joshi from Chicago. She's only a junior in high school, but she's on fire. She's helping us behind the scene with the amazing website, updates, etc. And Fatima Nazneen is actually out of Clarkston, Georgia, which is the most diverse square mile in America. She lives there, and she helped us spread the words and spread books all over the area. So without these folks and without y'all, we can't do this alone. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Oh my goodness, I just love your story. You have to come back and let us know how we can continue to help you, help Reach Unity,
Absolutely.
and let us know the progress that you're making. And we'll definitely be, an ally to
Thank
your
you.
nonprofit as well. And we wish you all the very, very best. And I want to thank everyone else for tuning in today. And thank you so much to the teachers. This global
Yes.
pandemic has been very challenging this last almost 2 years. So we appreciate the work that you're doing
Mhm.
with our children. And thank you for being here, for sharing your experiences that's relevant to this topic. And so I want to wish everyone a good night. But I also want to mention, we're closing this conversation with anyone who may have an inkling of thinking about becoming an author, excuse me.
That's right.
Please join us in our next conversation. We're sitting down with an author. She's written 10 books, and her business is called
Wow.
Pollen LLC. And her primary focus is to help turning other people's stories into a book. And so, there's so many different avenues that she uses to go about this, but it's so important for people, everyday people, to know that there's power in your story. And so the main focus of Bloom and here on our platform is helping you understand what your power is,
Mhm.
so you walk into every room knowing exactly who you are and the value that you bring. And
Wow.
so, yeah, so I'm grateful again, Yenny, just to wrap up the conversation, for you being here.
Thank you.
Let's keep in contact. We have to definitely
Definitely.
keep in contact. And I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. And we will see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks for
See you soon,
blooming with us.
Zakia. Thank you again,
Okay,
everyone.
thank you.
Bye bye.